Welcome to the third in a series of discussions with housing leaders about racial equity and economic inclusion and what our industry can do to move the needle on both. Today, high schools and colleges are graduating the most diverse classes in history, and multifamily firms are eager to recruit the best and the brightest of those graduates. We want to look like our customer, hence we want to be more competitive in attracting women and people of color to our business. But precious few of those graduates get exposed to real estate curricula, and even fewer learn anything about apartments. Which brings us to the topic of the day, which is the Diversity Pipeline Challenge. And it's really a delight to have two people on who are just at the forefront of this challenge. The first, I've worked with and known for 35 years. That's a long time, Jeff, where we're colleagues at Fannie Mae, and Jeff has been involved with NMHC during my entire 20-year tenure. He is Executive Vice President and Head of Multifamily at Fannie Mae. Also delighted to have Marcus Cole with us, who is Director of the Future Housing Leaders Program at Fannie Mae. Just welcome to both of you, and let's get started. So let's start with you, Jeff, and why don't you give us a quick overview of the Future Housing Leaders Program? We want multifamily firms to understand what it is and how they can participate. So let's kick off there.
I'm actually going to give a little bit of history here because I think it's important to see what the genesis of the program was. So the then CEO of the company, Tim Minneapolis, and I were having a one-on-one one day and musing about the industry gatherings and the lack of diversity in the industry gatherings. And then we started talking about why that is. And it really got to be firms traded diverse talent back and forth at high prices, frankly. But bringing in new talent and growing talent that over time would be the leaders of our industry, that was really the challenge. And that was really how Future Housing Leaders was born, was us saying, you know, if we really want to change it, one, we have to take some of our resources and be part of making it happen. And two, we have to solve the pipeline problem, because if we don't solve the pipeline problem, things will never change. And so we started out with a partnership with the National Urban League. And it really was, can we go on the campuses, recruit talent, get them interested in our business, which is a fascinating and rewarding business, but most people don't know it. If your parents weren't in this industry, you have no clue. If your parents didn't own a commercial building, if your parents didn't own a house, they probably just don't know. So it was, let's get on campuses, let's recruit talent, and then, this is the hard part, let's get our partners to agree to take the talent in the summer of their sophomore or junior year, and sometimes senior year, really pay some attention to them, and then hire them if they so chose. And so that's really kind of what the program is still today. The three things: you got to go recruit the talent on campus, which really get them excited about our business, which I think is an easy story to tell. The second thing is you have to nurture them when they get into your firm. And that is harder work, and Marcus will talk about all the hard work that it is, but that's harder work. And third, you really have to have a commitment to hire these folks, because then mentor them once they get in. But the beginning point is you just got to get the talent to be interested, and that's really what this program is saying.
And what was the connection between the National Urban League and the historically Black colleges and universities? What was the nexus there, and how did you get led to that partner?
So our firm had traditionally had a really good partnership with Howard University, and we recruited tons of people that work, as you know, Doug, at Fannie Mae, went to Howard. I mean, it's a local Washington, D.C. institution. But what Urban League did was really help us with other institutions of the like. And then we figured out it's not just about historically Black institutions. For instance, it's talent that goes to any university, Virginia Tech, University of Maryland, American, any of these places, GW, Georgetown. It's talent that goes any place that happens to be in the groups that we're trying to attract. So we learned that you can't just rely on historically African-American colleges, although I'd argue there always will be a place to recruit there. There are really talented people that go there, and we should not disavow that talent. And because historically, those folks didn't end up in our industry, that's what makes it rich and fertile ground. We just need to do that. But it's also other universities that have like folks that really don't know us. And our job is to get them to know us.
Great. Well, we'll find out a little bit more about how that's working, but let me turn it over to Marcus now. And I know it's early. The pandemic could not have helped you this spring. But what key metrics can you share with us from the program so far?
Sure, Doug. And even despite the fact that we're in the midst of a pandemic, we have significantly grown the program year over year. This year, we had 278 participants in the Future Housing Leaders program, which is almost double from what we had last year. So we really hit the ground running and had great conversations with employer partners across the board. But our numbers are solid, 278, which again is double from what we had last year. So we're really excited about that.
That's great. Are there those who have been in the program before as they started as sophomores that are in the program again this year? In other words, is it working through the system that way as you had envisioned it?
A little bit of both. So we certainly have students who have continued to show interest in the housing industry and have done so by maintaining relationships with Future Housing Leaders. They've served as brand ambassadors on campus and then have continued to stay in the program and have had internships for 2 years. So as we continue to track their journey, the hope is that they will eventually be offered a full-time role and that they become members of this industry that we love so dearly.
It's it's a fantastic way to kick the tires on talent, because we've hired 5, my little shop here, we've hired 5 people who were interns with us, and we've got 2 interns working with us now, which brings me to the second question for you, Marcus, is here we are in the middle of a virtual world. How are you running the program, at least for this current summer internship program? What logistically are you doing?
Sure. So, our program offerings are 100% virtual, and which has been tremendous. And we've done that in the past, but this year we really had to over-index on not only the curriculum, but more along the lines of how we're actually providing that curriculum to students. So this year we had 14 or so employer partners, including Fannie Mae, that had interns, and everybody was doing things a little bit differently, right? You had some programs, some employers rather, who were looking to do 6-week internships. Some were doing 8-week internships. Some employers could not move forward with an internship, but they still wanted to stay committed to their students that they made offers to. So they pushed them over to Future Housing Leaders, and we were able to push through a virtual curriculum, which includes access to a number of learnings, whether that be through the Mortgage Bankers Association, whether that be through the commercial real estate aspect, whether that be through offerings from Fannie Mae for Harvard Mentor Manager and O'Reilly, and quite frankly, access to other students via our social network and LinkedIn. And even more so, we've had a great turnout with our executive speaker series every Wednesday at noon, and we've done that all virtually. And on average, we had roughly 150 or so participants every Wednesday throughout those engagements. Some people obviously couldn't attend, but where we did not have attendance, we certainly recorded everything and make that available to our network.
Great. So we understand the importance of investing in a diverse pipeline and how a diverse talent pool benefits both the individual companies and the industry as a whole. Can you give us a few examples of specific Future Housing Leader program elements that are designed to support participating firms?
That's right.
Either one of you.
Oh, good. Jeff, did you want to take that?
No, you go ahead, Marcus.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, essentially our program is, I like to think of us as like LinkedIn for college students in the housing industry, right? So from a student standpoint, we are that connection point, as Jeff mentioned earlier. From an employer standpoint, we aim to really understand each employer's diversity and inclusion goals, how they're looking to tie that to business results, and then subsequently, we understand those things and then start to make connections on their behalf. Once interns are a part of an employer partner shop, what we do is we come on top with supplemental learnings. So say, for example, an intern would do a normal 9 to 5 in there, learning property management or doing some things with resident services in a multifamily shop. We would supplement that learning help them understand holistically kind of the ins and outs of the housing industry. We do that through our speaker series. We do that through education components. We do that through some of the products that you all have made available. So in essence, we are taking their experience, what they're getting hands-on, and coming on top of that to ensure that they have a well-rounded experience both in theory and practice.
Oh, thanks, Marcus. Jeff, I think I know who your first apartment firm was who raised their hand to participate in the program when you first kicked it off. If I'm not mistaken, it was Daryl Carter with Advantage Capital Management. I think that's right? But
Yep.
who have been the early adopters besides Daryl and who've stayed with you throughout the program? I'd like to showcase these firms and give them a little shout.
Well, certainly, I think Walker Dunlop has really, and Willie's enthusiasm about this topic is everybody knows how enthusiastic he is about the topic. And all I had to do was call him and we were done. And I think he might have the most interns of everyone. In addition to that, there's Avenant, of course. There's Wells Fargo is with us from the beginning. And I have to say, my friend Alan Weiner, I called him up and I only said 5 words to him and they were in. And we've had other, Capital One. We've got a bunch of partners who've stepped up and have been in the program throughout. And I'll say, for them to be successful, the thing that matters here is leadership. And by that I mean, with Avenant, because it's Dale's firm, and when he says to HR, we're getting 10 of these interns, and we're going to really get them ready for our business. They know he means business. In the larger institutions, that really is going to involve the executive calling the HR and saying, listen, we're taking these folks in. I know you got a process, but let's figure out how to make sure the process for this student is good. Because one thing you have to understand, these students have options. When you get somebody who, is a 4.0 at Howard, Google's talking to them too. So they're not just being talked to by us. So if we have employers that aren't serious about, I got a commitment to this. This is about my bottom line. I'm not doing it for altruism, although I wish that some of us would, but I'm not doing it for altruism. I'm doing it so I have talent in the future. And frankly, for the first 5 years, cheap talent, right? Until they get to the point where they have experience, and then you can start stealing from each other, which I know you all do. But at the very least, it's a chance to get cheap, really smart talent, and you need a commitment from the top. And some of these executives, you've got it. I mean, I mentioned Willie and Justin Wheeler, Bercadia. There's a bunch of folks who really care about this, and they care about it. Toby Bizzuto, oh my God, absolutely, all over this like a cheap.
That's great, fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Marcus, back to you just for a second, because it is important that the interns have a very rich environment and its support system within that environment. Jeff, after I left Fannie, I talked Rob Levin into giving an internship to my son, and he sat there and read like 3 novels, and he totally bored out of his mind. So, if you don't do it right, you're wasting your time. So what the industry depends on the success of the interns, and they depend on the infrastructure and support system being really good for them. So what supports are in place to help you ensure they succeed? And then what about after they complete the internship? Do you work with the companies in terms of they're potentially hiring these interns?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, great question, Doug. I mean, I think this is one of my favorite parts about being the director of future housing leaders and even being involved in a program of this magnitude. It's the engagement with students. I get a lot of energy from going on campus, and unfortunately, we're doing things in a virtual environment now. But what that means is I've just had to be a little bit more creative of how I engage with them, right? So LinkedIn messaging has become my new best friend. Every morning I spend time checking in with our interns from different employer shops just to make sure that their experience is good. And that's important to us. One thing we want to over-index on is the student experience, right? There's nothing worse than an intern going to a company and not being, enthused and mentally stimulated about the work. And to Jeff's point, we want students to choose housing as career of choice because there is so much competition. So to that end, we have opportunities to engage with them from a LinkedIn standpoint, as I mentioned, but even more so, we want them to engage with each other. So we create a LinkedIn Future Housing Leaders group where they can communicate and learn about each other's experience, because everyone's experience is different. And as I mentioned beforehand, we had 14 different employer partners, so the day-to-day might be different as far as some of the projects that they're working on. We provide access to all of the curricula that I mentioned beforehand, and students are highly engaged in that curriculum. So we create a structure that is not overwhelming, and that essentially supports their efforts. So roughly 6.5 hours a week they're spending doing future housing leaders related activity, whether that is courses, data science courses using pool talk data, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac data on both the commercial, multifamily side and a residential side to understand how data drives the industry. I mentioned beforehand some of the MBA courses they're taking where they're certified, and again, the Housing Matters speaker series. So after their internship, we have a closeout ceremony where we essentially thank them for their participation. We capture feedback, and then from there, we develop relationships with the students. Most students engage with throughout their entire internship process. But then afterwards, through LinkedIn, through keeping up with the employer, through understanding their resume growth, we're looking to continue to place them and understand their experience. So we like to think of ourselves as not only future housing leaders on the front end, but really helping to guide them through their process. We offer resume assistance, interview assistance, LinkedIn profile assistance, all those things. So, and we receive really good feedback about those students who have done so.
Oh, fantastic. So what have been the biggest challenges in pushing the program out to the industry? Because I'd like to be even more helpful than I've been, and I'd like to know how we can be helpful to you. So what are the basic challenges that you're facing with it?
I'll take some of this, Marcus, and then you can take the rest. I think the one thing is, and I think post George Floyd, I think we should redouble our efforts, particularly to bring African Americans into the business. I still, when I go to your conference every year, there are probably 20 people there who look like me. I think we can be better. And so I think the first thing is we've got to aim a lot higher. And I really want to get to a point where we set an industry-wide goal that says, we start in 2021, by let's say 2026, 5 years from now, we want 1,000 new people to be in our business of color or who are gender minorities. I think we've got to do that and get more serious about it. So I think the impediment is we've been thinking small, and I think we need to think bigger. So I think that's it. And then I think we need leadership to drive, and leadership drives when it acts like it cares. So when interns come or associates come at Fannie, I actually sit with them and we have books that we share. Like whatever book I'm reading, everybody else is reading. I think we have to get to the point where it's a little time from the executives to say, I really care. And I'm going to express my care in some of my time. So I think that's missing. And then I think it's the execution part, getting HR to really embrace this and own it, getting business people to mentor these students. And if somebody's assigned to your area, really get on it and treat it like it matters. I think those kinds of things matter. And I'll just, maybe Marcus, I stole your thunder, I don't know, but go ahead.
No, I mean, Jeff, clearly I agree with everything that you said. And I think that the biggest challenge that we've seen is that there is so much excitement and involvement from executives in the industry. I mean, this is really, really important. I think we all understand that. Some of the things that I challenge specifically is kind of the process pieces around getting HR involved, right? And I think that's where the work happens. It happens with campus recruiting teams. It happens with internal HR departments. So we're doing a better job as a learning of that about asking that criteria up front. Again, it's really understanding the respective entities' D&I strategy and how D&I recruiting falls into that. I think that's important. We don't want to lose the fact that this is, a business, and we all know. I mean, Jeff has talked about this a great deal about the advantages that a diverse firm has as far as bottom line, as far as diversity of thought, all these things. So in doing so, that's probably our biggest challenge. We've learned a lot over the course of the last 3 years, including the pilot year, about how to be more effective with the conversation, because conversation leads to action. I love the fact that Jeff is pushing for targets and commitments. That actually makes my job a lot easier, because then we can talk about those things and we have a true north that we're aspiring towards. To go back to what Jeff said, we have specific partnerships in place to promote the housing industry for specifically African Americans with our partnership with Management Leadership for Tomorrow. We also have the same partnership with the Hispanic Association for College and Universities. If you look at both of these demographic areas, they're huge as it relates to opportunity to influence the industry. In 2018, 6% of the industry workforce was African American. In 2018, 7% was Hispanic. If you look at household type, if you look at who our renters are, they're people of color, they're brown and Black folks. And right now, from a demographic standpoint, the workforce doesn't necessarily reflect that. So I think the more we can get the language out about these statistics, what it looks like, and then the commitments from executives and how those commitments kind of go down through HR, I think that would be a huge help to this effort.
Yeah, and I think, Jeff, from our own experience, our collective experience, what a CEO's commitment means when David Maxwell and Jim Johnson just carried that torch consistently, actually putting it into people's compensation. That made a huge difference at Fannie Mae in terms of our senior management team looked like America.
Yeah.
That's because of the CEO's commitment. So HR, is on the ground, but the CEO's leadership is essential in this thing.
That's right.
Marcus, one quick question that comes up, when you think about this program, are you restricted to students who are majoring in certain subjects, or are you wide open with looking at the student population, or are you looking at certain pockets, I guess is the question.
I love that question, Doug. I think, and here's why. We talk about diversity, and one of the things that's important to mention in diversity is diversity of thought. And if we continue to kind of limit ourselves to major, then we lose a great opportunity to engage students who are not necessarily aware of the housing industry. Jeff mentioned this before, but if you don't have someone in your immediate family or someone in your circle that's in real estate, and I'm not talking about the realtor next door, I'm talking about housing finance. If you don't have someone like that, then chances are you're not going to go to school pursuing that. So you may be interested in sociology, psychology, liberal arts, but through Future Housing Leaders, we're encouraging employers to look beyond the scope of just, traditional majors, whether that be, real estate, finance, or business. We're targeting everyone. And I think Fannie Mae, using Fannie Mae as an example, looking at the 7,000 employees, I've been a Fannie Mae employee for 10 years. I know most of my colleagues don't have a degree in housing related majors. So it's just one of those things where that's where that diversity of thought comes from. And we're really encouraging the industry to think differently about the majors that they're looking for.
I often tell a story about one of the most dynamic executives I've ever known, Ann Logan. Her undergraduate degree was in Spanish, and she went and got an MBA, and she was one of the most dynamic finance people I ever met. You don't really, to be successful in this business, you don't need to be in finance or accounting or real estate. You just need a brain.
Yeah, and a little fire in the gut. Yeah. Are there best practices, Marcus, for ensuring an inclusive environment for those interns who are underrepresented groups? As you're working with these 14 or so companies that are involved?
Yeah, I think so. And these are, these best practices are something that we're trying to implement and encourage our employer partners. I think the big best practices that we're encouraging right now is to capture feedback from your interns, right? I think it's really important for companies to understand an intern's experience from a inclusion and diversity standpoint. We've heard from folks in the industry that have flat out said, we don't have a diverse culture, our staff's not that diverse, and we don't want to put someone in a situation where they can feel uncomfortable. And my response to that is, that doesn't mean you don't start. You have to start somewhere, and oftentimes you have to get this feedback. So that's one of the things that we're encouraging folks to do. We're also using Fannie Mae as an example here. I mean, Doug, you mentioned it. When I look across Fannie Mae, particularly at the leadership level, I see an immense amount of diversity as far as minorities and gender, and that reflects across the board. So anytime we have an opportunity to talk about how Fannie Mae has approached it, we do that as well. I've looped in folks on the OMWI team, which is the Office of Minority Women and Inclusion, to talk about our D&I journey, to make sure that, you know, folks, although this might be overwhelming, it's small steps at a time, and it's your commitment above all else. So, you know, just to recap, it's staying firm in the commitment, and it's getting feedback from your interns. Ask questions that quite frankly, if you're asking yourself, you may not give yourself an honest answer. Don't be afraid to engage young people, particularly Gen Z, millennials, who are looking for a diverse culture. They will let you know how they feel. And I think, you know, where there's gaps, that creates opportunities.
Great. Jeff, this for you and Marcus too, but many of us are working with new vigor and a strong sense of purpose and urgency to address the persistent diversity gap in our industry. And speaking about the pipeline issues specifically, from exposing young people to many career opportunities in CRE to supporting diverse candidates so they develop and rise within an organization, what do you see as our industry's biggest challenges, and how can our industry work together in addressing those gaps? Can we start with you, Jeff, on that?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is mindset change. And the mindset change has to be, listen, I want to do something different, but it's going to benefit me. So I'm not doing this as a favor to anybody. I'm doing this because it'll benefit me in the end. So I think the mindset change, that this is like any other talent, it's that. And in our business, particularly in the origination part, like so in the mortgage banker origination part, typically you have clients and you're afraid to expose your clients to diverse talent because you're worried that your client might think bad of you. I think taking that risk and introducing diverse talent to your client and giving them an opportunity and feedback. Feedback's a gift. And feedback, when they do well, it's a hug, and when they don't do well, it's not a hug. And I think allowing people to be in situations where they get to learn, I think that's our challenge, but I think we're up to it. I mean, I have a lot of optimism for our industry. It's an industry I love dearly, and I think we can be better. But it's going to take, you know, more Doug Bibbys, more Dal Carters, more Willie Walkers to really step up. And I think we can.
Great, Marcus, do you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. I think in light of the recent events that's happened across America, I think that there is certainly a renewed energy with future housing leaders, and I think this creates a platform that is much needed. We've had it, and Jeff, through his leadership and his commitment, has pushed this even before the things that we're experiencing now. But now, because we know that this is at the forefront, how do we continue to move the needle forward? And I think, you know, what future housing leaders can do is make it easy for companies, right? We can be where you can't. Our geographic footprint, you know, our messaging, you know, we tailor it in certain ways. So allow us to be that vehicle to really push diversity and inclusion on your behalf. You know, no one can do this alone. I think partnerships are key. So really looking forward to this continuation. And as Jeff said, folks like yourself, Doug, and other leaders that we've engaged with in the CRE landscape, it is tremendous, and we hope that continues.
Well, you know, thanks to both of you. And I do want to say that this kind of program is the most efficient way for a company to recruit. And I mean it. You know, you're paying a very low dollar amount. I mean, it's important to the students, obviously, but you're paying a very low cost to actually have a chance to, as I said, kick the tires of these talented young people, and then you have a shot at hiring them, which is just wonderful. So let me ask you, either you or both of you, for closing remarks, but I want to say one thing before you do, and that is that I want to urge all of our members to pay attention to this. This is a fabulous program. Jeff, we ought to have 1,000 in it right now. And I know it's hard work, but this industry can support it. We need to support it, and we will support it. So let me give you each a chance for some closing remarks here. And again, I want to thank you for being with us today.
Well, I will say to come, I think we should set an industry goal. I think we should have companies sign up and have some accountability to what we're doing. And I think it should be different things. One, how many students we get in. So let's have that as an initial goal. But then how many students we graduate to the business. And so our accountability regime changes over time. But I really like to set that. And at some point, we might come out and ask people to actually sign up and say, I will take 2, 3, 5, 10 a year, right? And to actually make a commitment, because I think the way you get change is you have to say, I want change, and you have to sign up and you got to do it.
Right, great.
And we will commit. This firm will commit. I could say that. This
Great.
firm will commit. So we'll be at the leadership part, but we really want to have a lot of folks join us.
Marcus?
100% agree with what Jeff said. You know, I know Fannie Mae's commitment is there. Doug, I know your commitment is there. You know, I think that at the end of the day, I love what I do, and I think that reflects in the work that we do for future housing leaders. I like to share my own personal story growing up in the inner city of Buffalo, New York, and I think that's what makes my connection to some of the students I engage with so real. It's tangible. So, you know, I encourage you all, whoever's interested, to reach out to me directly. I can be reached at Marcus, MARCUS_Cole@fanniemae.com. And we are willing to have, we want to have conversations with you all. We want to know where you are now as far as your D&I journey, D&I recruitment efforts, and we want to help support those efforts. But, you know, there's no better time than the moment we live in. You know, there's a lot of craziness going on, and this gives us an opportunity to do something good. And by good, I mean, you know, we're identifying the talent on your behalf. Now, as you get that talent, you interview that talent, and they come for internships, the next step is, as Jeff mentioned, bringing them on into the business. So we're at the beginning phases, but this is something that collectively as an industry, I think we can tackle.
Thank you, and I commit to working with both of you in the program and pushing it out as aggressively as we can for Perch as well. So thanks for taking time today to be with us, and I wish you both the very best in this endeavor, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Doug.